When I think back to the past, I can't help but remember the days filled with sweat and passion when I worked as the creative director at the media company I had devoted so many years to. I was Billie Eilish. And this job wasn't just a job, it was my life. My brainchild that I had carefully nurtured. I wasn't the type to stand out in a crowd, but I had talent, and I knew that. Everything I did was meticulously crafted, from subtle marketing strategies to creative promotional campaigns, all of it tied to my name, working in such a competitive environment. Every day was a huge challenge, but I loved it. I loved my work, the thrill of each new idea being accepted, the recognition of every product I created. Everything was going smoothly, at least until I stopped being myself. I don't clearly remember the day, but I can recall the feeling of waking up every morning, walking into the office with projects waiting for me to handle, contracts needing signatures, and ideas waiting to be brought to life. That feeling was like living in a world full of color, and I was the one holding the brush to paint that picture. But then, there were days when the colors in my work began to fade. I started to sense a change, not from the outside, but from the people I had trusted. Cambria, my younger sister, was someone I had nurtured family bonds with and had always been ready to support in my work. But I never expected that she would be the first to push me out of this game. Cambria had always been the one people loved. She had a natural charm, a smile that everyone was drawn to. I trusted her too much. I trusted the so-called family ties too blindly to notice the things happening around me. Then one morning, when I walked into the office, the entire company was ready to announce an important notice. When I sat in the meeting room, my colleagues were there, their eyes fixed on me, yet no one said a word. I had imagined many things before coming in, but I could never have imagined that I would be kicked out of the company I had worked so hard to build my career. The CEO's words were like a heavy stone on my chest. "Billie, we need a major shift in strategy. The company has decided to downsize, and unfortunately, your position will be replaced." That was all. No clear reason, no reasonable explanation. I felt as if I had just lost everything in an instant. And then, I realized the truth I had never wanted to face. I wasn't being let go because the company needed change. It was because of someone else, someone I had trusted, who had silently stepped into my position, Cambria. Not only had she replaced me, but she was also the one behind all of those decisions. With her sweet smile, her perfection that everyone admired, she had not only taken my job, but had also stolen everything I had worked so hard to build. And that wasn't the only shock. As I stood up and turned to leave the meeting room, I felt not only the loss of my job, but the deepest betrayal. The people I had considered colleagues, friends, were nothing now. That feeling was unbearable, like I had worked all these years only to receive a distant pat on the back in return. The smiles I had once seen now felt fake, no longer genuine friendship. But what truly hurt was my mother's reaction. She had always seen Cambria as the perfect child and had always viewed me as a shadow in the background. "Just keep working. Billie, everything will be fine," she would say. Those words were like daggers to my heart. I wasn't the child she cherished anymore. I wasn't the one who made her proud. I was just a servant, a child not worthy of attention. I walked out of the company with an empty heart and a feeling of being left behind. I didn't know what to do next. During those days, I was like a shadow walking silently among people, unnoticed, uncared for. But one thing I knew for sure, I would not let myself fall. Maybe I had lost everything: my job, the respect of my family and friends, but I wouldn't let them defeat me. Never. The feeling of losing trust, of losing respect from those you love, is something not easily forgotten. But I knew that. in the darkness of failure. There was a strength waiting to be unleashed. I didn't know where to start, but I wouldn't let myself be pushed out of life forever. My story hadn't ended. It was just beginning. At first, when I left the company, I had no idea what to do next. The feeling of loss, disappointment overwhelmed me, and the sleepless nights spent worrying about the future were endless. But then, in that silence, I began to realize that no one was coming to save me. I had to save myself. After watching Cambria step onto the stage, taking over everything that was once mine, I became more determined than ever. It wasn't about revenge, it was about proving that I deserved what I had worked so hard for all these years. Everything had changed, and I had to change too. I started reevaluating myself and my work, with more attention to detail and practicality. Every strategy I had built, every promotional campaign, I began to break it down into smaller parts, reevaluating what I could improve. There were nights when I sat in my empty apartment, with only dim lights and work sketches scattered on the table. But I no longer felt lonely. That feeling, I knew exactly what it was, the hunger to find myself again. But this time, I wouldn't do it loudly. I would act quietly. No one would know. No one would understand. I would give myself the chance to rise, even if no one was by my side. In the following days, I spent time researching startup companies in the media industry, where I had once worked, and I found an opportunity. I didn't want to work for anyone else anymore. I wanted to be my own boss, and that's when I started looking for funding. First, I turned to old friends, but after a few conversations, I realized no one was going to give me this opportunity. I had been looked down upon, and now I had to start everything from scratch. That feeling was truly unpleasant. In those moments, I didn't know what to do, but one thing was clear. I couldn't let myself be swallowed by failure. I had to stand up, no matter what. I began taking online entrepreneurship courses, attending webinars on marketing, and learning about brand building strategies. At first, the information was overwhelming, but the more I learned, the more I felt I was slowly regaining what I had lost. Gradually, I started putting together a plan for myself, a new brand, a new strategy, and I knew that if I didn't act now, I would forever remain one of those who were left behind, never moving forward. I had seen so many talented people forgotten, but I didn't want to be part of that group. One morning, while I was sitting in a coffee shop near my home, an unexpected message appeared on my phone. It was an invitation to join a project from a small but promising media company. At first, I thought it was just a temporary opportunity. But then I realized that this was the only chance I had to try again. Everything was starting from scratch, and I began taking action. I set a goal for myself. I wouldn't let anyone take my opportunity again. I had to prove that I could succeed without standing under anyone's shadow. First, I needed to restore my own belief in myself, then earn the trust of those around me. Challenges were certain to come. One afternoon, while I was trying to set up a plan for my first marketing strategy, I received an unexpected call from someone in the industry. It was an old colleague from my previous company. He told me that Cambria was about to launch a new promotional campaign, and I knew that part of it would be based on the strategy I had built before being fired. I wasn't surprised, but the feeling of betrayal once again made me angry. I understood one thing clearly. They would always try to defeat me, but I wouldn't let myself be forgotten. I wouldn't stand still. From then on, I began researching the products and campaigns Cambria was working on. I didn't just want to win. I wanted to show them that what I had created wasn't something that could be copied and taken away so easily. It was talent, sleepless hours, ideas that couldn't be measured in money. They hadn't seen my true worth, and now I would make them see it. During those days, I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. I quietly rebuilt everything. Every time I met someone from my past, I didn't show any signs of what I was up to. I just knew that one day, they would have to see me not through meetings or old strategies I had once created, but through my real success. I began to feel a change within myself. I was no longer the weak one, no longer the person always seeking approval from others. I learned how to work with patience and perseverance, not rushing things. Everything needed to be built from the ground up, from real values, and I believed that this would lead me to where I wanted to be. But deep down, I also knew the price wouldn't be light. I would face challenges, shocks, and moments where I'd feel drained. But that was okay, because I understood that in life, nothing comes easily. And when I look back, I'll see that everything I do today will pay off tomorrow. The first few months after I started over, I felt like a broken ship, constantly being pushed out into the vast ocean without any direction. However, little by little, the first steps began to bear fruit. I gained a few clients, some who trusted what I could do, but no one knew that inside. A fire still burned within me. I had never forgotten what Cambria had done to me. She hadn't just taken my job. She had pushed me out of a life I once thought was mine. But now, I knew what I had to do. One evening, as I was reviewing the first promotional campaign I had just launched, my phone suddenly buzzed. It was a message from an old friend in the industry, someone I had worked with at my previous company. She told me that Cambria was preparing a new campaign, and much of it was based on ideas I had once developed before I could fully process the information. It felt like a bomb exploded in my mind, not only because of the old betrayal, but because I knew this was my opportunity. If I didn't act, Cambria would continue to use what I had done to rise, and I would once again be left behind. The next day, I decided not to hesitate anymore. I knew I couldn't just wait for an opportunity to come. I had learned that in life. You can't just sit and hope things will happen on their own. I set to work from scratch, building a new, stronger, bolder strategy than anything I had done before. This time, I wouldn't follow the same path as everyone else. I would do something truly different, a marketing strategy that no one could replicate. I didn't just want to win. I wanted to create a wave strong enough to make others look back. I began looking for new partners, people who could help me create something different. Every time I attended a client meeting, I didn't just sell an idea, I sold them my belief in myself. I wanted them to feel that my company wasn't just a service provider, but a place where they could entrust their future. There was even one time when I attended a seminar with well-known industry figures. I didn't just listen to them talk. I had private conversations with them about the future of the industry and about things they hadn't noticed. Then one day, I received a call from a major client, someone I had only dreamed of working with before. They wanted to collaborate with me. It was the first sign that I was on the right path. But I still hadn't forgotten Cambria and what she had done to me. The next situation forced me to really change the way I thought about everything. During an important meeting with a client, I overheard a conversation between industry people. One of them, a former colleague, revealed that Cambria was struggling with the campaign she had launched. Things weren't going as expected, and the strategies she had applied weren't yielding the desired results. Gradually, the pressure built on her, and everything started to collapse. The person I once thought of as the winner was now facing the very difficulties I had once experienced. That feeling wasn't easy to handle. At first, I thought I would feel happy knowing that Cambria was struggling. But then I realized that the important thing wasn't whether I won or she lost. It was that I had stood up and started again from scratch. The feeling of victory didn't come from pushing others down, but from overcoming myself. The more I thought about it, the calmer I became. Cambria could try to hide her weaknesses, but no one could hide the truth forever. And when she faced difficulties, I knew I had to be ready to step into a new phase, one where I wouldn't take revenge with words, but with real results. At the same time, I began to notice that my strategy was starting to show results. New clients were reaching out, and my campaigns were starting to attract attention from industry experts. I realized that despite being betrayed, despite being pushed down to the bottom, I could still rise up and prove that I was someone who couldn't be defeated. Every time a new client called to collaborate, every time I received compliments about the strategies I had implemented, I grew more certain that I was on the right path. What I had gone through wasn't the end, but only the beginning of a new journey. And I knew the day would come when Cambria would have to face her own failure. A week later, while I was working with my team to finalize a new campaign, I received a message from someone in the industry. The message was short, but it was enough to make me restless. Cambria is having urgent meetings with the directors of her old company, and her strategies are being questioned. That feeling wasn't satisfaction. It was a strange, indescribable sensation. I had waited for this moment for so long, and now I just had to keep doing what I was doing, quietly and strategically. I knew that, in the end, I would be the one to win this game one day. As I sat in my small office, pen in hand, but my mind spinning with restless thoughts, I received a call that I had never expected. On the other end was the voice of an old acquaintance, someone I had worked with in the media industry. He didn't say much, just one sentence. "Billie, I think you should know that Cambria is in big trouble with her new campaign. They're starting to doubt her abilities, and there may be some changes in the management team." That sentence stunned me, not because I was expecting Cambria to fail, but because I realized I was standing on the edge of a great opportunity. The feeling inside me wasn't satisfaction, but calmness. I had once wanted revenge, wanted to show her that I could do things she never understood. But now, I no longer carried any hatred. I had grown tired of living in the shadow of failure and betrayal. I had learned that to truly win, it wasn't about tearing someone else down, but about standing up and proving that you can overcome any challenge without relying on anyone else. When I received the information about Cambria, I didn't rush into action. Instead, I did what I had wanted to do for so long, prepare for a turning point. I didn't need to steal her achievements. I just needed to do one thing: prove that leaving a place where I was no longer appreciated was the right choice. As soon as I heard the news, I began working with the small team I had built over the past months. My first clients had already started to see the difference in my strategies. I didn't just bring the usual promotional campaigns. I brought real innovation, creative ideas that no one in the media industry had dared to think of. I knew that if I kept going this way, I wouldn't just rebuild my company, but I would make Cambria face the mistakes she had made. The following months were a long, hard journey, but full of determination. Every campaign I created, every presentation I prepared, was an opportunity for me to rise. I knew I couldn't let worry, anger, or betrayal last forever. I had seen a great change within myself. No longer was I someone who sought validation, but someone at the forefront of change. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone except myself. But the biggest change came when I received an invitation to participate in an important project from one of the largest companies in the industry. This wasn't just a normal opportunity. It was the only chance I had to prove that I could rise and make a spectacular comeback. This project wasn't just a campaign, it was a rebirth in my career. The invitation came not because I was an industry veteran, but because I had created a unique style, a strategy they trusted would bring success. When I received that invitation, I didn't feel the excitement I once would have, but an odd sense of calm. I knew this was my chance to step out and do something big. No one would judge me based on my past, on what I had done before. Everything would be judged by what I was doing now, and I couldn't stop thinking about one thing. If Cambria was struggling, I would be the one to offer the solution. On the first day of the new project, I couldn't help but recall everything that had happened to me. The first meetings weren't easy, as I faced new people, new partners, and even some old colleagues. I knew that if I made a wrong move, everything would collapse. But instead of worrying, I felt more confident than ever. I had prepared thoroughly, and I didn't need to hide anything. I wanted everyone to see the real me, not a faded shadow, but someone strong enough to dominate this game. The following meetings became even more interesting. Clients and partners began to see the difference in the way I worked. I didn't just bring creative strategies, I also approached problems in a different way. I didn't have to follow trends. I created new ones. And then, one day, I received word from one of the biggest partners in the industry. They wanted to sign a long-term contract with me. This was the turning point I had been waiting for, not because I had beaten Cambria, but because I had stood up and started over when no one thought I could. Everything happened quickly, and one day, I received a call from someone in the industry. It was an invitation to attend an important meeting, where I would meet the founders of one of the largest media companies in the world. They wanted me to be the creative director for a global strategy, a position I never thought I could reach from being fired. I was now on the threshold of an opportunity I had only dared to dream about. And when I sat in that meeting room, looking around at the people there, I didn't feel any anxiety. I knew that, no matter what, I was ready to step into this game. I had fought. I had overcome all the challenges, and now I wasn't afraid of anything. When one of the founders stood up to welcome me, I simply smiled, not out of pride, but because I knew that, in the end, I had won, not through revenge, but through what I had created. The days of being left behind, of being betrayed, no longer mattered. I had rewritten my own story, and this story would never end until I said it was complete. Everything in my life changed during those challenging times. If anyone had told me I couldn't start over, they would have to think again. I, Billie Eilish, had risen after every shock, after being left behind time and time again. And now I was ready to face everything that had happened. I didn't need to confront those who had betrayed me, because I had come to understand one thing: the best revenge is success. And I would prove that through the results I achieved. Looking back on those difficult and painful days, I realized that what I went through wasn't failure, but preparation for something much bigger. The first steps, though hard, became the foundation for later success. I was no longer the person standing in Cambria's shadow, or the one who had been treated as a mere blur in their lives. I was Billie, the one who was rewriting her own story. The project I was working on had now become a major milestone in the media industry. Every strategy, every plan I created yielded unexpected results. Clients and partners began to see me not as a failure, but as someone bringing real change. The promotional campaigns I led not only generated profits for my partners, but also earned their admiration for my talent. I wasn't exaggerating, but I knew I was on the right path. Each time I entered a new meeting, I felt not only like a creator, but someone making a difference in an industry I had pursued for so many years. The day I learned that Cambria was struggling with her campaign, I didn't feel joy. I didn't rejoice at her failure. what I felt was calm. Cambria, the one who had once pushed me out of her life, was now facing the mistakes she had made. She had been at the top when I was at the bottom, but now I no longer saw her as an opponent to defeat. I only saw her as someone paying the price for her wrong choices. And I had proved that when you are strong enough, patient enough, the results will speak for themselves. While Cambria struggled with problems she couldn't solve, I started receiving collaboration offers from big companies, strategic partners I had once only dreamed of. One of the most important meetings I attended was with one of the world's largest media conglomerates. They wanted me to lead a global project, and I knew this was the moment to show everything I had. This wasn't a battle with Cambria or anyone else. It was my personal battle with myself. I no longer needed to seek validation from others. I just had to work hard, give my all, and wait for the results. A month later, as I looked back on what I had done, I couldn't help but feel proud. The campaigns I had led started to gain strong attention. One of the major campaigns I directed became a landmark in the industry, covered by the media everywhere. And when I received word from one of the top executives in the industry saying they wanted to collaborate with me long term, I wasn't surprised. I was ready for these opportunities, and I had prepared thoroughly for every situation. But just as I was getting ready for the next step, something I didn't expect happened. While I was enjoying success, Cambria began facing a downfall in her work. Her strategies were failing, and now her former company's executives were demanding an explanation for the mistakes in her campaign. I wasn't the kind of person who paid attention to others' failures, but a part of me couldn't help but think that everything she was paying for was the result of the choices she had made regarding me. She had everything I once longed for, but now she was facing a truth she couldn't hide. In the end, Cambria couldn't maintain her success. While I stood at the top, she was cornered, unsure of what to do next. And I didn't need to do anything at all. I didn't need to confront her directly, because I knew that, in the end, the results would speak for everything. I had proven that I could succeed without lying, without taking what wasn't mine. Everything I had achieved was entirely thanks to my own effort and talent. Finally, I realized one important thing: success doesn't come from pushing others down, but from rising above yourself. And when I looked back, I didn't feel the need for revenge. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I had done what I could, and I was proud of it. I knew that, whether Cambria or anyone else failed, I would remain standing, not because I wanted them to pay, but because I had learned that in life, the best form of revenge is success. And I would continue down my own path, not out of envy, but because I knew that, in the end, I would be the one who triumphed. And as I looked ahead, I no longer thought about those who had abandoned me. I only thought about what I could do next, the next steps I would take to achieve my goals, because I understood that in this life, only patience and relentless effort truly matter, and I would never stop moving forward until I achieved my dreams.